Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the November 12th, 2013 meeting of the Rotary Club of Chicago, the world's first service club and the first and founding chapter of the premier humanitarian service organization in the world. This week, America celebrates its veterans. Once upon a time, Veterans Day was known as Armistice Day, in honor of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, when the world breathed a collective sigh of relief and witnessed the end of the war to end all wars. So I thought it'd be fitting today to begin the meeting with the words that Paul Harris used to greet Rotarians who attended the first post-war Rotary International Convention, the 1919 convention in Salt Lake City. Although the convention was dubbed the Victory Convention, Paul Harris honored the memory of the soldiers who had fought and died, not by lording it over the vanquished, but by focusing on the principles for which America had fought and for which Rotary stands. He said, "Since the last meeting of the International Association of Rotary Clubs, the dove of world peace has fluttered painfully, exhaustedly home. Never has it been more welcome than it was at that expectant, breathless hour. The spirit of broken-hearted mothers and widows and fatherless children flung open the window to let it in, and the strong men of vision and human sympathy have resolved that it shall never depart again. Men are asking, did the awful Holocaust pay? Certainly not in material things. Indemnities are baubles when compared to the lives of men. Empires rise and fall, but truth is everlasting. The war was worthwhile. It taught us the value of unseen things, that liberty can never be dear at any price." He went on, "Rotary is interested in the larger values, in the invisible, internal things for which men are willing to die. A material Rotary would soon be a dead Rotary. A Rotarian who sees nothing in Rotary beyond the business he can get out of it is a dead Rotarian, and the sooner he can be buried, the better for the cause. Rotary, being invisible, spiritual, is intelligible to the higher order of things. Diamonds cannot comprehend Rotary, but friendship, sympathy, integrity, devotion, and idealism can." So today, as we honor our servicemen and servicewomen from all the wars since the war to end all wars, let's be proud of their bravery and their victories, but also always remember that we honor not the wars themselves, but the peace that their sacrifice secured. Thank you.
By way of introduction, that Rob is a partner at Baker & McKenzie, former president of this club, former district governor, and also a former president of the Scottish Law Society, where he inaugurated the Judge William J. Bauer International Justice Award. Rob is one of the world's most dedicated Rotarians. His commitment to Rotary runs very deep. It can be traced to his formative years when, as a very young man, he was so keen to associate his life with Rotarian values that he chose to be born on the 5th of February, that was the day Rotary was born. He was chosen to be born on the same day as Rotary, so he shares a birthday with Rotary. And Judge Bauer is such a treasure for this club, for Chicago, and for our local Scottish community. He's Chief Judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit in Chicago. He, of course, is one of the most respected figures in the legal community, nationally and internationally. His accomplishments in that field are second to none. But I have to say that of his amazing accomplishments, the two things I'm most grateful to Bill are the fact that he's the chairman of the Scottish Home, and perhaps more importantly, he married me to my wife, Aisha, and I appreciate that very much. So please join with me and let's welcome to the stage two members of the Rotary Club of Chicago, of whom we're very proud, Rob Knuepfer and Judge William Bauer.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and Gus, thank you for that wonderful introduction. You read it exactly the way I wrote it. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, it's really a privilege to have Judge Bauer, who is, we know, has been a long-standing member of our club and adds to the burnish of the founding club of Rotary International. The highlights of his career are too numerous even to mention in our gyrator, much less Gus's worthy introduction. And you'll see as you have a chance to read the gyrator that the judge has achieved the pinnacle in every category of the legal profession, whether he was a practicing lawyer or a legal scholar and a law professor, to a state and federal prosecutor, to a state and federal judge. And he has achieved as a practicing lawyer, the highest rank among his peers for excellence in legal practice, to numerous awards and tributes, all reflective not just of his keen intellect, but his lifelong devotion to community service. And he really embodies what Rotary is all about, which is service above self. So it's really a privilege for me to be able to have a chance to share a few minutes with him in this fireside chat as we get a chance to ask a few questions of the judge about his career. And I should conclude by also noting, as he stood during our recognition of veterans, that among his many achievements is not just service to his country as a civilian, but also as a veteran of the armed services. So, Judge, thank you for joining us today.
A pleasure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can't never hear these things. If you can hear me, I'm doing fine.
Of the many professional roles that you have held in the legal profession, whether as a practicing attorney or as a public official, prosecutor to a jurist, even a law professor, is there one role that has been a standout for you, or something that really is a hallmark of your long storied legal career?
I mean, what I enjoyed most?
Yes.
The job I got paid least for, and that was an assistant state's attorney in DuPage County. I started on May 1st of 1952 at $322 a month. I told my school teacher wife that she could quit her job because I had struck gold. Multi-piano dreams of avarice. The next 6.5 years I was in a trial court almost every day. A great place to learn to try lawsuits is in the prosecutor's office. It's always undermanned and overworked. It's a $1 million education stuck in your ear a nickel at a time. But you learn very rapidly. And toward the end, it wasn't the money the lack of money I would have paid if I could have afforded to keep the job. I once heard it described as the most fun you could have with your clothes on. I look back at those days even now. That was many years ago. Great. Cessed dust out. It was a great thing. Every day to get in there and do legal jousting. Nothing since then has made me feel bad about the job I've got. But I still envy young people starting. By the way, there's some young lawyers here. I'll give you this piece of advice. You want to learn to be a trial lawyer, get a job in a prosecutor's office, which is what I told Rob Knuepfer back when he was clerking for me. And he did. He was an assistant United States attorney. I was was U.S. Attorney there too. All the jobs I've had, I've enjoyed very, very much. That's the one where you get out and dig all the time.
Of the thousands of cases that you've handled, either as a practicing lawyer or a prosecutor or a judge, whether civil or criminal, are there one or two that stand out in your mind that you'd be able to share with us?
One or two would be a little difficult to narrow down a field of, quite literally thousands. I counted up by accident not too long ago, and I have written over 4,000 opinions in the Court of Appeals, which is a rather staggering number if you think about it. But I was a district court judge before that, and I was a state trial judge for 5.5 years, and I was prosecutor of both state and U.S. Attorney. The cases that I look back on most fondly are the ones that came out right. That is, some I didn't want to try. The first case that stood out in when I was on the district court was I tried a case involving 24 police officers who were indicted for essentially bribery. And since I had been working with the police almost all my professional life, and at one time I was the attorney for the Illinois Police Association, and counted among my friends all the police in 2 or 3 counties. It was a great disappointment to me. Almost matched by Operation Greylord, which I did not have anything to do with, except to stand by and cry as judges went down into. John Adams was a pretty bright apple in his own right before he became president. When he was the United States congressman, no, it was before the United States, he was a congressman in the original time, said, "It is prudent not to put virtue to too serious a test." And he was right. You really don't know what your ethical standards are until you've been tempted. If you have no predilection to do something, I take no credit for the fact that I was finished up, and I'm not finished up, but I've now been in public service since May 1st of 52 in one form or another. And never took a dime that I didn't get from the salary. But nobody ever offered me a dime, so I didn't stand up and be too virtuous about it. You have to spend a night on a barge with Cleopatra before you can understand the temptations that were given to Mark Antony. So that case was a bitter disappointment to me when I had the police officers. But some were highlights. I once prosecuted a man for making gasoline out of water. I couldn't prove he couldn't do it. But he made a great after-dinner speech. Many years. Well, I wept bitter tears when he died. By the way, he was represented when he was tried on the federal level. I tried him at a state level. They charged him with selling more than 100% of the product to make gasoline out of water. And of course, they could prove that like shooting fish in a barrel. But he was represented in that trial by one of the distinguished Scots. We had Tom Campbell. His father has the building named after him, also a distinguished Scot. So, that was an interesting trial, only because nobody got hurt. Almost all criminal trials have a victim who got hurt, money or otherwise. Street crime more seriously, murder, rape, so. But that one was, nobody went to jail. The people I called as witnesses were mad at me for prosecuting him. They thought he could really do it. And to top the thing off, 2 of the jurors visited him shortly after the trial and bought more stock. The secret of being a good lawyer is to look good losing. That criteria, that was marvelous.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question. You mentioned that one great way to learn how to be a lawyer is to become a prosecutor.
Right.
Are there qualities of lawyers that you can share with us that you think are the most important?
Yeah, you have to understand what the job is. The job of being a lawyer. One of the things about being this generation of lawyers, to look back on your professional ancestors. This country was founded by lawyers. It was talked into existence by lawyers. And they were ones who drafted the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And there's an Illinois lawyer who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. And if you follow in the footsteps of the really, really top lawyers, ethical, zealous in the proper sense, that is to say, not zealots, but the zeal of trying to make sure that justice is delivered, and being in constant search for perfect truth and perfect justice. Full of the knowledge as a smart person that they're not going to achieve it, but you'll be damned if you'll be satisfied with less. And avoid a couple of things. Well, I went to parochial schools. I grew up in the south side of Chicago. Teachers were all Adrian Dominican nuns, and they taught, avoid occasions of sin, they said. I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. By the time I was 18, I damn well knew what they were talking about. And it was a solid, very sage piece of advice. When your lawyers are constantly exposed to temptation, not just the money, but if you get too wrapped up in your client as either a prosecutor, defense lawyer, or in civil cases where you represent a company or you represent individuals, and you begin to think that you are on the side of God and virtue, so therefore you can cut corners and skim over things and not even the playing field because you think the other side are bad guys, then you're a lousy lawyer. And more than that, you miss the point of the whole thing. The point of being a lawyer is to deliver the maximum amount of justice to the maximum number of people. And I might throw in as a Scotsman, at the minimum cost. And that's one of the things but if you meet your client and work with him, you'll find something about him you like. That's true of almost any human being you meet. That's what Rotary is founded on too, that you meet people, you like them. If you know them well enough, you'll find something about them you like. Even mass murderers get involved with their lawyers, and the lawyer winds up finding something about him he can say is good. Which doesn't mean that he can change the rules to help out. But within the purview of the rules, he can do what he wants. There's a lot of people that ask me how good lawyers can represent people they know are guilty. I'll start with a kind of a philosophic notion that you're not guilty until the jury says you're guilty. When you're charged with a crime, you're presumed to be innocent. By the way, I do not presume people even to be sane, so that but I don't have to. Unless I'm a juror or the trial judge, I don't have to presume people's innocent. And if you say you presume people innocent, you could save a fortune on your burglary insurance. Because you still have it because you know that there are people. But the criminal defense lawyer does something that is very important for the prosecutor as well. He keeps them on their toes, and he makes sure the government lives up to its constitutional obligation to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And if he, as I said, I've been in public service these many years, 60 plus. There is a feeling of self-righteousness that comes with representing, and it's a good feeling, but not so self-righteous that you're not being called to account. People shouldn't do what you say they should do just because you know you're right. The defense lawyer keeps you honest. And he too, or she too, has the same rules that the prosecutor has. A great obligation to the client, which in effect is a great obligation to everybody. That is, if you let the government get away with doing what they want to do without any constitutional inhibitions, you have lost freedom. You've lost everything. And so you can't let it happen. On the other hand, you don't want to cheat your way into it. So that's the advice you give. I said there was another clerk I sat next to, Michelle Smith. She said, clerked for me for 2 years too before you did. She was after. That's right. Oh yes. Oh, I forgot how young you were. She, by the way, is an alderman in the city of Chicago. A job I would. I remember Mike Belanek and Joel Flom, a member of my court, was also an assistant state's attorney, and he was the first assistant U.S. attorney. Bob Belanek and I were talking about how we got involved in public service and what it paid. And Joel said when he started as an assistant, it paid $6,700. I said, well, I started 10 years before, Joel. I got paid $322 a month. And Belanek said when he started out as an alderman, his first political job was an alderman, he said he got paid $8,700 a year. But he had to give up his presumption of innocence. Among the people who worked for me, besides you two, that I'm so happy about, Jim Dobson was my first assistant I hired, and he replaced me as U.S. attorney. I hired a former Attorney General, well, 3 are now federal judges, no, 4 are federal judges. And Ty Fader was the, so I had a lot of, I have now had 83 former clerks, and not counting the assistants I hired in these 2 capacities. And I still count them all as friends, and I worry about their health and welfare, and they meet together once a year to relive the glorious past.
The days of the stallions is what my term is concerned.
One more I have to tell you. When I first went on the state bench in 1964, I could not hear criminal cases in DuPage County because I've been state's attorney since the memory of man when I thought to the county. So I was assigned by the Supreme Court to Will County. Now, my first criminal case was in Joliet. It was a murder case. And the jury was out about 40 minutes after a 2.5-week trial with a lockup jury all the time. And we returned the verdict to guilty and set the penalty of death. That's my first criminal case as a judge. It was not mandatory, nor is it now, but it was, the judge was the one that made the ultimate decision. But he could not make a decision of death without 12 people saying unanimously, voting for a death penalty. As we were walking, leaving, I sent post-trial motions for a month later, and I was walking to the car and returned to my duty station in Wheaton, and I said to the court reporter, what the hell did they do that to me for? Dump a death case in my lap when there's 12 of them, there's only one of me, and he said, you know, you weren't drafted. You ran for the job. And he was right. I never bothered after that. I took the responsibility seriously. So that one I remember very vividly. That stands out as much as any other one. So, any other questions?
Well, you've been a mentor to many lawyers and judges throughout your long tenured service, including a mentor to me. Is there one person in your life that stands out who was a mentor to you?
Oh, yeah. More than one, but one was a circuit judge named Bert Rathsey. Bert was the same age as my father, so the relationship was pretty odd, but he was chief. He was the first judge I appeared before when I was starting out, and he was a probate judge then. And I had no more idea than the man that owned how to handle this. The only thing I knew about probate law was I knew how to draft a will. They taught us that in law school, everything else. They didn't tell you what to do when somebody died, you know, when you were stuck with the will. So I was working with the law firm of Daniels, Guile, and Knuepfer. Daniels was the state's attorney of DuPage. Private firm. And I was in court. First I was to close out an incompetence estate. The lady had died in insane asylum, and open the decedent's estate. And they might as well have been speaking to me in Swahili. I had no idea. I got James in probate. So I finally went over to the probate clerk's office and said, is there a form? I said, no, there isn't, but son, I'll take you down and show you a recent case along those lines. Well, I went back and traced it. Didn't take any license with it, filled in different names and so on. Got it all done, then went back and asked, is there a form for death? No, but I'll take you back. So I did the same thing there. Oh, my first appearance in a court was the probate court, and Judge Rasty was the judge. And so when I stepped up, and the man I represented was a very big wheel in Elmer, so and Baldwin, Otto Baldwin, the family had been, I think they founded the damn town. And so I stepped up, and so the judge said to the good to see you again. And he said, sorry I'm such bad thing, but Mary is probably better off dead. And he says, yes. And so I said, I handed up the papers. He's going through it. He said, oh, just as wonderful, just wonderful. Stamps the papers all the way around. And somebody did it. If all attorneys did such a good job, my job would be made easy. But I was very well puffed up by the things I got. The second one, now the thing I was afraid of was the proof of heirship, which to those of you who know that, you have to recite a litany of things. How many times you were married, did you die with a will, and so on. He said, because I know the man so well, Mr. Bauer is all right if I prove up, and he did. And then he said once more, when he took the papers, Mr. Bauer, you hired the best lawyer in DuPage County to do this work. No, he didn't have to do that. And he knew this was my first case. I thought, it doesn't cost a dime to be kind, and it doesn't cost a dime to be nice. We maintain that relationship. I've watched him work, not just with other people, over and over and over again. When he had to send somebody to jail, I remember watching him, when I was a prosecutor, watching him, he'd have tears in his eyes. He taught me what it was to be a judge. Be kind, be decent, but do the right thing, and he did. So yes, he was a great mentor.
Well, we could spend the rest of the afternoon, I think, learning more about your great career and lessons for all of us.
Lucky, wasn't it?
I have to ask one wrap-up question. I was actually going, I know that some of you may know that the judge's wife is running for Cook County judge, and of course he can't talk about politics, but I'll plug a vote for Patricia Spratt. And we don't have time to even talk about that. My last question was going to be, who is your favorite law clerk? But since Michelle is here, I know the answer to that. So I'm not going to ask the question.
Michelle just said favorite boy clerk.
That's right. There you go.
So,
you of course.
Thank you. I just want to conclude by saying how grateful we are to you for your long service to this club, your extraordinary service to this country at all levels, and to be able to share time with you as someone who's the embodiment of service above self and living the four-way test. We are most blessed to have you in our midst. Thank you.
Thank you very much.